Hi there, everyone. My name is Shannon, and I'm Willamette Week's music and visual arts editor. I'm here today with Jelani Memory, who is a co-founder of A Kid's Book About and author of A Kid's Book About Racism. Jelani, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for reaching out and doing this.
So just to start out, how have you been spending quarantine? What's your day-to-day look like?
Oh, my day today is it's really simple. Usually wake up at 6 or 6:30 with our youngest, our 1 year old, and he usually needs a diaper change and a little applesauce pouch. And then, getting ready for the day for work. And my wife and I are getting the kids ready typically for school. And they'll do, we have 5 other kids who have, school all day, homeschool. And then I spend most of my time either on Zoom calls or, working away, making new books and collaborating with my team members. And then more time at home with the family, dinner, watch a show, bedtime books, and spend a little bit of time with my wife and then do it all over again.
Nice. Yeah, I believe you have 6 kids. So what's
6 kids.
what's parenting been like when you're all stuck together all the time?
Yeah, it's challenging. I won't lie, it's really challenging, and I think it's just as challenging for the kids as it is for the parents. When you're all stuck together and cooped up, patients get really short, and it's been tough. But I will say, I've had more tender and sweet and meaningful moments with my kids than I can ever remember, because part of that tenseness of being packed together also creates a vulnerability, where there's sort of some more room for conversations and honesty and, sharing where you're really at.
Right. So speaking of parenting, as I said earlier, you wrote a kid's book about racism. And I know right now a lot of people are trying to figure out how to talk to their kids about, the international uprising that's happening against racism and police brutality. So yeah, how do you talk to kids about something that's as like scary and upsetting as police brutality?
Yeah, well, I think the first bit of advice I give is just to try to start somewhere, start anywhere, start anchor into some point of reference that you can, that feels genuine, that feels honest, whatever your experience is, whether you are come from a family of law enforcement or are a person of color or white. You got to find some place to anchor in. My book was designed as a way to create an anchor for families who didn't have it, as a way to start that conversation. But I think starting it is so important, because it allows kids to say, oh, this is okay to talk about. Because kids have thoughts about these things much more than we would ever let ourselves believe, especially for grown-ups and parents. And so once you open that door, you find that they're more thoughtful, they're more curious, and they have more questions than you otherwise would think. And so I think start somewhere, and then be as honest as you can. Don't try and take away the feelings that will come with that, whether that's discomfort on your part or your kid's part, or sadness or fear. I think those things are okay to feel, especially when you're talking about something as complicated and as sad as racism and police brutality.
Right. What kind of questions have your kids been asking you?
Recently a lot of why does this happen? I don't understand. Why don't people just love each other? And why don't they accept each other? And why would somebody hurt somebody else because of the color of their skin? And, as much as we've talked about racism, sometimes racism feels like this thing that doesn't make any sense, why it would be so. And the thing that I've tried to help my kids understand is, for people who are coming from a place where they view a Black life or Black skin as a threat, they don't perceive that they're doing something wrong. They actually think they're responding in an appropriate way to something that feels threatening to them. But I go, you do understand that they're wrong by perceiving skin color as threatening, right? And they go, yes, of course. And I think that gets them to a place to understand that. And then it's very easy to have that historical conversation to go, how did we get here to where Black individuals were perceived as a threat simply because of the color of their skin?
Sure. Yeah. What kind of advice for like what about kids who want to like support the movement in some way? What are ways that parents can help their kids get engaged with what's going on?
Yeah, my advice actually for parents with their kids is very similar to parents with each other, which is have those conversations amongst yourselves, with your friends, with your family, with your colleagues. Don't opt out of that, because it turns out everybody has that 10, 20, 30 people that are close in their circle that they're in close contact with. And if you indeed believe, like I do, that Black lives do indeed matter, and that excessive force by the police and the murder of George Floyd was indeed wrong, um, go out and march, carry a sign. Those are awesome shows of support, but also talk to those people who are in your sphere of influence. Because as much as me and my book or other activists can speak into their lives and maybe reach them, you for sure will be able to reach them. And I think even for kids to hear that, to know that they have friends that they can reach and go, I want to tell you something about that I believe in, that I believe strongly about, that I care about, can be a powerful influence.
Yeah, sure. And so a kid's book about also released a book about COVID recently.
Yeah.
Um, and so could you talk a little bit about the decision to release that one as like a free ebook?
Yeah, turns out that decision was really easy. We as a team watched the world just change overnight, and then change again, and then change again. And we realized as a company that we were uniquely positioned to respond by creating a tool for kids and grown-ups to understand COVID-19 and also be able to talk freely about it without being afraid of saying the wrong thing or bringing up the wrong fact or not knowing which article to point to. And for me, that book always had to be accessible for free. It was not a negotiation about whether we were going to charge up front for that or not, because it was a worldwide pandemic and still is, and was a conversation that I thought every grown-up was going to need to have. And thus we translated it into Spanish and created a workbook edition as well, and hope to do many more language translations for it to reach more folks, because guess what? COVID-19 isn't going away anytime soon. We're going to be living in this world for a little bit. And so we've been really proud about how far that book has reached and how many lives it's affected.
Yeah. I kind of want to go back to something you said earlier for a second. So, and I know that part of the impetus but behind a kid's book about is that kids are able to like grapple with bigger issues than we often give them credit for. Um, but so I'm wondering if there are any moments that you've been surprised on, like the insights or observations or things that your own kids have had to say amid everything that's going on.
Yeah, every time. There is no time. And even for me, having that thesis with this company that kids are totally ready, it surprises me every time how ready my own kids are for those conversations. And that actually the discomfort, the fear is almost always on my part. When we go into those conversations, they will ask a question innocently and curiously, and it will bring about fear and hesitation and unsureness on my part. And I don't think my kids are unique in that way. I think all kids are in that place where they're hungry and they want to know and they want to understand. And us adults, we're full of all this baggage and all these taboos and all these things we're not supposed to talk about or say things out loud. And yeah, I've seen kids, and especially my kids, be really remarkable in terms of asking really on the nose and honest questions.